Can you describe to us the best that you remember just exactly what happened on this flight?
Yes, Earl, I'll be glad to. The first time I became suspicious of a difficulty with this particular flight, all I must say in all fairness to the captain and Delta Airlines, we all fly on various flights when, you go through, if planes were not allowed to fly when there were rainstorms, then we would not have an airline industry. And as I've stated, flying is a way of life. But about 70 miles southeast of the city, which is probably 15 to 20 minutes or less, we encountered some wind turbulence, and upon approaching a few minutes later the city, we did circle the airport. The captain mentioned a few times, and it wasn't really too bad. But a few minutes prior to landing, the weather did not seem too bad. 3 to 4 minutes. I don't really recall because I was sitting about not near. I was at least I was 50 feet from the left window and maybe 15 or 20 feet from the right window, so I was not fully aware of any weather. The only thing I do remember the pilot saying was that it was 100 degrees. And so it would seem logical that if it were 100 degrees on the ground, there could not have been any rainstorm. There might have been wind and certainly gentle sprinkles, but certainly no rain to any degree. I've never been in a rainstorm when it's been 100 degrees and the sun's been out, so it wouldn't stand to reason that he expected any turbulence ahead either. At any rate, he made his normal descent, and possibly the rain picked up all of a sudden, and I suppose that the pilot must have decided to go ahead, and even though he was in a rainstorm, to make a landing, and I imagine that the tower had cleared him to do so. Well, otherwise he wouldn't have gotten within, 1,000 feet of the ground or been on a normal descending pattern. But probably within a quarter of a mile, maybe a half a mile of where he was due to land, he encountered this, our craft encountered this wind shear, which probably dropped us. It seemed like 1,000 feet, but in all honesty, it probably would have been, maybe 200, 400 feet in a matter of seconds. At that time, I knew we were getting ready to buy some trouble. This all took about 3 seconds, then within a second and a half, he gave his engines as much as they could, and I knew that the plane was not going to be able to pull out of it, just having the feel of the weight of the aircraft, and sure enough, he wasn't. And after a couple of more seconds, when he could not give the engine enough thrust to come up, that must have been the time when the back wheels hit the interstate highway, and the only way to look at it, I suppose, that man that was decapitated on the freeway in Dallas that afternoon, is that because the captain was able to touch those back wheels on that interstate highway, there were survivors. If that plane had crashed as a solid matter and his nose had gone on down in the ground, I would imagine everyone aboard would have died. So, for the simple fact that the pilot made the supreme effort to touch the rear wheels first, as they're trained to do, I think I'm alive today, and the other 27 or however many there's still left, I do not know. And then ordinarily it's about 3 to 4 seconds, sometimes less, but usually 3 to 4, when the front wheel of the aircraft touches the ground, right? When the front wheel did not come down, in fact, when the nose of the plane did not even come down and descend in a normal fashion, I knew something was wrong. Pulled the seatbelt tighter and just said, "Lord, help us," and put my head between my legs. Somehow I got the pins out of my pocket and put my briefcase under the seat. They had instructed us to do that, by the way, about 3 minutes prior to landing. They said, "Please put any briefcases or any foreign objects that you have brought up under the seat and place your seats in an upright position," which is ordinary procedure, but that was very proficient and professional of Delta to do that, and they did it. When we did not touch down the front nose, within about another second and a half, maybe 2 seconds, after the 3.5 seconds had elapsed, so therefore about 5 seconds after the back wheels touched down, we probably encountered 3 or 4 sharp thrusts to the bottom of the plane, which may have been the water towers that were pictured in the various pictures. I don't really know what it was or what really happened. All I know is it all happened within about a split second and a half. no longer than a second and a half did we encounter 3 sharp thrusts and an explosion. The plane at that point severed, possibly hitting a hill, a monadnock sort of a hill. The front 2/3 of the plane tumbled on down, probably a half a mile of freeway on a United Parcel type landing, maybe where the Federal Express United Parcel planes land. So the pilot was probably very close, maybe a quarter of a mile, maybe a few feet from a runway when he made his attempt down. I do not know. Within another second to a second and a half, our tail had spun around, possibly, and positioned me in such a situation where when I finally opened my eyes a second to 2 seconds after impact, maybe 2.5 seconds, I don't really know how long, I was looking down at the ground. I didn't know why I'd been spared. All I know is I said, Lord Jesus, I thank you. Help me do what I can to live. And I laid there a few seconds looking down at the earth, and I knew I had to get out. I didn't know what I was to do. I was fully conscious, I thought, and I knew I might have been, either in heaven or back on earth. And I said, well, either way, I'm going to unbuckle my seatbelt and find out. And it took me 4 or 5 seconds, and I went over the left hip, and then I will remind people on this interview that it was over my right hip, but I had put it on extra tight. And I hate to say it, but I don't really hate to say it, I recommend the rear section of an airplane. But I unbuckled the seat and dropped to the earth, which at that time was moistened by the rain and was muddy. Took about 2 steps away from the airplane and said, my Lord, you have saved me. The least I can do is go back and save the others. And I went right back to the plane, knowing that if he got me this far, he was not about to let go now. And there was a man who had his arm broken, his right arm, it looked like, and he said, is it there? And people were basically, the people I could see were in utter shock. We were all in a state of, I guess you might say, trauma. But the people I could see were in a state of shock, and I dragged a couple away from the plane. One lady who may not have lived, I do not know, because the Red Cross eventually, after the 3rd time I came back, insisted that we leave. And there was another man that was stuck in his seatbelt and could not get out. I did not mention, but a couple of us were able to get his seatbelt undone and carried him to safety also. So as far as I know, no one perished in the seats of the plane that were left. And I'm just very grateful to be alive, and and then eventually I was carried away by an ambulance to a Parkland Hospital in Dallas, Texas, which I will have to recommend to your audience and to anyone in this country as one of the finest hospitals. And I will say to you and to everyone that Delta is still my favorite airline, and I will continue to fly. I think what happened to me was a freak incident of nature that was a most unfortunate thing for the big majority of the people, and I just thank God on this public radio station, and I'll do it wherever he tells me to go, that I'm alive, and I'm grateful to be here, and I appreciate your call, and if I left anything out, I apologize. And for those that didn't make it, my wife and I, our prayers will be for your families and everyone else. And Earl, I thank you for your call.
John Moore, thank you very much for talking with us.
Glad to do it. Bye.
And God bless you.